Howdy, howdy, howdy. Another day in quarantine. This is getting pretty old. I mean, we've talked about it a lot. I guess I don't do this very often, but I talk about it all the time. Anyway, this time I wanted to talk about, or I'm bringing up a little bit more. We can start getting into the origins just real quick. And I know I've alluded to it in the past, we know that this was, or we don't know. The preponderance of the evidence is leaning towards a bioweapon of some sort, or a studied, or at least a studied strain that was in a laboratory that was released in the area of Wuhan, China. And before, I talked about it a little bit, but when we were when everything was coming along, it doesn't really matter. It matters a little bit to the extent when you're trying to fight it, but at the same time, we're just trying to cope with it and live with what's going on is more on the government side. So it's it's not even, I don't even care to really talk about it now. Now I feel the need, hey, let's delve into this a little bit more. And there's some interesting articles. I think it's Bill Gates, either the Washington Post or Washington Times. He has a good article, I believe. I should have wrote some of this down. But anyway, he has a good article on it. Stefan Molyneux has been tracking this and documenting some of the sources, and has some pretty relevant scientists that are also corroborating this. And then if you looked at as this pathogen, viruses made its way across the world, there's been a number of entities that have studied it genomically, and starting with the Indian Institute, I believe, of Virology. And that paper was actually taken down as a white paper. The first study on it I believe it was by them. And it was taken down by more political pressure than anything, and that they can actually look at it and they could see the different structures, how it it's more not a natural occurring virus, that it was kind of amalgamated of different parts of viruses with the base of SARS, and then some other mechanisms when it comes to attaching to different proteins. We're talking about like the HIV structure, not HIV, get me wrong, but the structured component of how it attaches to, I believe it's alpha proteins. I could be mistaken on that. But I haven't really delved into it as much. I listened to some of the reputable people, but because whatever the structure is, I'm not really concerned. I just look at, okay, well, let's look at the bad theory. There's no real patient zero. We haven't really found that. Stefan Molyneux has a pretty good grasp of a possible patient zero, which is a scientist who was, I believe she worked with the Wuhan, not the level 4 lab, but there's CDC equivalent, which is there in Wuhan as well. And they were studying those bat-derived viruses in a very remote area, and possibly contaminated. I think there's 4 major theories on it. But anyway, it's once you start looking at the scientists, there were, I think there's about 7 scientists that have been disappeared that were related to this type of studies. But this one in particular is a female. I should write this stuff down. See, I'm just doing this stuff on a whim, kind of just shooting it out there. Here, this is some stuff you need to look at, and I haven't really been putting any resources, because this is more like, hey, here's a way of thinking about it. That's why I'm doing this. It's like, here, check this out. Now is the time for you to do the research. But anyway, so maybe next time I'll start writing a lot of this stuff down. But this is some stuff to think about, and it might actually change your paradigm, which is good. If you have a way of thinking about it just because the media tells you, one, you never should trust the media blindly. Always question everything. But 2, it's good to get other opinions. And me, I'm just providing that. I'm saying, hey, check this out. This may have been an accident. It may have been an accidental release. That's kind of where I have the feeling, hey, this is probably an accidental release. And from that weapons lab. Now, there's a number of ways to do it. But when you hear about the bat thing, yeah, it's a bat-derived virus. They were studying bats in these facilities. But it didn't come from the wet market. There's no evidence of that. In fact, there's lack of evidence. So I don't know why we jumped to that conclusion when so happens to be the CDC equivalent Wuhan lab in the Wuhan or that facility, then a level 4 lab, the only one in the country, just happened to be there within, so many meters of supposedly where this started. But so there's the whole wet market thing that I've yet to see anybody produce any evidence. And according to some sources who Steph on Mala News had on his show, the majority of the initial cases weren't even tied to the wet market to begin with, or they didn't have any reasonable ties to the wet market. It was just there had nothing to do with it. So I haven't seen any evidence that would lead me to believe that. I see more of a lot of coincidences and some evidence from whistleblowers has been initially taken down, and some other scientists. So I went to I told you, in the institute. There was also, I believe, a study in Germany. I believe there's one in Canada and in France, and then also some number of other scientists have actually studied genomically and have come to the same conclusion. This was a man-made or man-manipulated virus. So, I mean, that's where I'm